We continue our position preview series. We'll take a look at the shooting guard position today. What are the big questions surrounding Brandon Miller and company? All of that on Locked On Hornets. Yeah, what are you getting at? Interesting. Anyways, I don't know what you're getting. I didn't know.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available. We're anywhere you get your podcast. That includes YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, just a few more days left, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. There's Doug Branson. His Substack is everyhornetsboxscore.com. His Twitter handle is @DougBransonLOH. And I'm Walker Mehl. You can listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m., 92.7 FM. Discussed the point guard position yesterday, the big question surrounding one star in LaMelo Ball and some of the backup pieces. Now we go to really the other star on this team in Brandon Miller and where some of his backup pieces are. Or should we, Doug? I guess we could ask that question. Should we be talking about Brandon Miller in the shooting guard position preview?
I don't know. I didn't want to stop this conversation in its tracks. I know you teased it in the cold open, but I think that's a good place to start is Brandon Miller going to start along someone bigger at the 3? Or is Charles Lee going to opt to bring in the new addition, Josh Green from the Dallas Mavericks, who's 6'5", and Brandon Miller 6'7", slot him at the off guard? But then you say, and honestly, if we just stop here for a second, do these position names matter all that much? Shooting guard, small forward. When I do my rotations, I just call them all wings. But we have to do some kind of separation as we talk about these guys. And so I think, can you have a shooting guard that can't shoot? We don't know if Josh Green, he can hit some corner threes, but on volume, is he going to be super efficient scorer? We don't know. But I think I would be more comfortable talking about Brandon Miller as, your small forward position this season. But I think as this team evolves, it needs to figure out a way to get Brandon Miller ultimately to the 2 slot and have size at 3-4, flexibility at 3-4 in terms of defensive schemes in the future.
Well, if we were going based off of his rookie season, we would be talking about Brandon Miller in the shooting guard role. If we're going based off of what we might think he plays in 2024-25, it probably is going to be more so small forward because we think Josh Green is going to be in the starting lineup. You and I we have talked about that. So this is the one where the definition is totally up for interpretation. You're right. It's really about the skill set more than it is the height these days, because if it was all about height, which we usually go to as a base to try to figure out what your position is, well, LaMelo Ball probably wouldn't be playing point guard, but his skill set is that of a point guard and can even play off ball, but we get the idea. So do you want to start this convo then with not Brandon Miller, but Josh Green? It makes the episode very different, but we do have to figure out who the starting shooting guard is going to be. And I guess you and I both think that is going to be Josh Green. So maybe he's just the guy to start with here.
Well, and certainly I think the bigger question marks surround Josh Green than Brandon Miller, because we know a lot about Brandon Miller based on that rookie season. We don't know exactly what his trajectory, his ceiling is quite yet, but I think with Josh Green, having come over from Dallas and played a particular role, a limited role for a team that had 2 superstars on it, what is that going to look like for him to come over to a Charlotte team that's going to be significantly less talented? He's probably going to be put into a starting role, but a starting role that could look a lot usage-wise like his role in Dallas, which I think his usage was around 13%, very low. He didn't have the ball in his hands a ton. And, he's going to be asked to take a major defensive role. And I don't think we should assume that he's necessarily going to be able to handle that. It's not as if he's going to come in and be a superstar defender based on the evidence we've seen in his first couple of seasons. I got a scouting report from Nick Angstead of the Dallas of the Locked On Mavericks podcast, and he said, look, guy gives maximum effort. He's always going to try hard. He's always going to be locked in. But there are some issues with lateral movement, with footwork, with being able to hang, with particularly complex offensive pick-and-roll schemes from opposing teams. At times, he can be slightly out of position. He can be taken advantage of on the defensive end. I think if he gets a one-on-one matchup, a lot like we saw with Brandon Miller, honestly. I thought like when Brandon Miller got somebody one-on-one on the wing, unless it was a Jalen Brunson, small, tiny, fast type, he was able to really to hang with them. Nick Smith Jr., kind of the same way. It's when they have to match footwork with quick decision making where things can kind of go awry a little bit, and that seemed to be the issue a little bit with Josh Green and Dallas. So yeah, I mean, I think there's some question marks around him, but if you're talking about a guy who would match perfectly next to a healthy LaMelo Ball, I can't think of someone that's more perfect than a guy that doesn't need the ball in their hands a lot and that is focused on the defensive end. That seems like a good match.
He doesn't need the ball in his hands at all, as we suggested. Look, his usage is non-existent. It's never been above really the 25th percentile. And that's what's going to happen when you play with Luka Doncic. So the question could be, okay, was it just because he was playing with literally the highest usage basketball player in the NBA last season? And is there something more to his game? There might be, but we're not going to see it here with the Hornets. I know that. We just talked about this in the point guard position preview, where Luka was number one, LaMelo was second as far as having the basketball in his hands. And even if LaMelo gets hurt again, you hear that? Knocking on wood. Nobody's at the door. I'm knocking on wood. Even if LaMelo goes to the bench, then Brandon Miller and Miles Bridges, those are going to be the guys that take over. And I think even offensively, not because Mark is going to have the basketball in his hands a lot, I do think there are going to be some times where Mark Williams is a higher up option than Josh Green in the hierarchy. So, yeah, I don't know if this guy's going to be exploding for a bunch of big numbers. The only way that you see him put up bigger numbers is because of sheer volume. He didn't play a ton of minutes last year after the Mavericks were tinkering with their lineup, trying to make it to the NBA Finals, successful doing so. So the volume is going to go up. I think so. The total raw numbers are going to go up, but the efficiency, the role, what he is going to be asked to do, yeah, I think it's going to be pretty damn similar. Like, he took all the right shots, Doug. He's been getting to the rim a lot, really, throughout his career. Last year, he took a dip as far as the amount of shots that he took at the rim, but he's been good at finishing once he gets there. Love that. Rim pressure and finishing ability. Love to see that. The three-point shot has been pretty solid over the last couple of seasons. Takes a ton of corner threes. Solid enough at hitting them. Yeah, like this is a perfect role player, connector type guy that doesn't need the basketball a lot, and it's why the Hornets valued him twice, and they were successful getting him the second go-around.
Yeah, you're totally right. This is a team in the Hornets that, even though they've changed coaches, and even though Charles Lee is defensive-minded coaches, they've still got their heads around being a high-octane, high-scoring offensive team that gets out into the break, and Josh Green helps you do that. He's a good decision-maker in transition, particularly with his pass, but also just with his spacing and being able to get to the corner quickly. And if he knocked down a few more corner threes for Dallas, he would almost be an elite three-point shooter. Like, I think he was almost, according to Cleaning the Glass here, he was 39% from three, and that's on a high volume of corner threes that he hit at an average rate.
A ton, yeah.
And on the non-corner threes that he didn't take as much, he was hitting those at a 40% rate. So had he just hit a couple more of those probably open corner threes, he would be an elite three-point shooter on some lower-ish volumes, I believe. But you mentioned the rim pressure, and rim finishing, really, because that's an area of weakness for the Charlotte Hornets. Yeah. Two big areas offensively of weakness for the Charlotte Hornets. It's not really playmaking. It's ball movement, but you could you could draw a line between that and LaMelo Ball being hurt. But the two big areas that we've talked a lot about on the show, missing easy shots at the rim, just missing straight bunnies that kill you in close matchups, and not being able to knock down open shots from beyond the arc. And it seems like Josh Green has been able to do some of those things in Dallas. Can he continue them on a team that doesn't have Luka and Kyrie? Like, he's probably going to be a little less open with the Charlotte Hornets than he was in Dallas.
Yeah, so many times teams will go after players where they think they can do a little more. I think Dallas kind of did this with PJ Washington, where, okay, we think there's more to his game than what he was showing this past season with Charlotte. And they got a lot of that in the postseason, and they relied on him a ton. You see this all the time with teams. Can you get a little more out of them? Okay, how much? Some teams it pays off. Other teams it doesn't because, well, no, the player was telling you who they are. I take a lot of comfort in knowing that the Hornets are not really going to be asking Green for a different type of role. They're just going to be asking for more minutes in the same role. So I know Josh Green can do this. This is a pretty damn safe bet, Doug. Like, based off of last year, the way that this goes wrong, right, is that he has a bad shooting season, that he was lying to us over the last couple of years with the numbers that he put up from beyond the arc. But everything else, like defensive effort, that's going to translate, even if he's not a perfect defender. No one's calling him that. The good vision, that's going to translate. The vision is going to be fine. Finishing at the rim, we got 4 years of data for him to be able to provide rim pressure. I know what we're getting in Josh Green, and that gives me a lot of comfort when making that trade.
I'll tell you what scares me, though, about what you just said and scares me about the prospect of lots of Josh Green minutes next.
Great tease. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. Yeah, I have a question too. We can ask the big question about Josh Green and then also transition into another player that I find interesting in this position group. We'll get to it coming up next. LOH. First up, I want to tell you that this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time? Game Time has a new. Oh, where were you, Doug? You were gone.
I was looking up Josh Green stats.
All right, that's fine. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks, it filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks also curates, the curation, I should say, makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, all sorts of different events, and there's all-in pricing too. You can toggle that feature, and it shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Again, I've mentioned a million times, I hate surprise fees. It's the worst. Plus, they give you a lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. There you go. Coming up next, we'll get a little bit more into Josh Green in the shooting guard position. We're asking the big question surrounding every single position. What's your big question with Josh Green? And I know you were searching for a scouting report, and that's why you didn't deliver Game Time. It's fine. I'm completely over it.
Yeah, I wanted to get this scouting report from Nick Angstead, who, watched him all last year and the previous years with Dallas. So watched this guy really closely and watched him develop, watched some of the things come together. He said that Dallas worked very hard with him on his three-point shot, and he worked out with Kyle Lowry a lot. And so his three-point shot has dramatically improved over the past 4 seasons. But he's still a guy that is great in doses. But if you're talking about high volume, that's when the question marks really start to come up. And so he also wrote that he's an amazing passer, not a good passer, not a great passer. He said that he's an amazing passer, which I think is going to be really critical for this wing position. And that helps take some pressure off of Brandon Miller to make those kind of plays, right? Brandon can more focus on getting open from 3 and be facilitated too by not only LaMelo Ball, but also Josh Green, and again, it's going to help them on the break. Here's what scares me about what you just said to close the first segment, is Josh Green seems like the perfect fit for the Hornets if he maintains a similar role that he had in Dallas. But a lot of guys get traded, and they get new, change of scenery guy, and they want a new role. They want greener pastures. They want new opportunities. They want the change. Change must mean something sometimes. And so that's my concern, is that Josh Green comes here and doesn't focus on the things that he did well in Dallas and try to amplify those, and instead tries to become something that I think he's not, and something that is not going to help the Hornets. That's really what scares me. And we're going to be talking about, like, Josh Green, to me, has the biggest headache-inducing factor of anyone that's on this current starting lineup. And what I mean by that is he gets the ball in his hands and you immediately start to feel the headache creep in, like, oh, what's he gonna it was like how we felt when Dennis Smith Jr. had the ball open from three. We're like, oh no, like I'm scared that that's gonna be what happens with Josh Green.
Yeah, it's funny. That would be a fun conversation before the season starts. Who are the Hornets with the biggest headache-inducing factor? Like, yeah, I picture
HIF. It's an advanced stat. Yeah. I'm trying to get Seth Part now to pick up on this. HIF.
Right. I'm picturing Grant Williams turnover games when he's just passing it straight to the other team.
Nick Smith Jr. has some serious HIF.
Yeah.
His HIF sometimes can be off the charts. Nick Smith Jr. Oh my
Steve
God.
Clifford is going to wake up at night yelling at Nick Richards. That's something.
Well,
that's
with Clifford, it was VIF, and I'm really trying to think about these acronyms before I say them out loud on the air. But there was a VIF factor, which is vein-inducing factor, right?
We could see it. We could see it. We could see it throbbing in his
But
forehead.
I don't think that's Charles. Charles Lee doesn't seem like vein-inducing guy. He does.
No.
This is what I do when I get annoyed. I start to rub my nose, the bridge of my nose, right in between my eyes. That's when I'm a little frustrated, a little annoyed. So keen-eyed viewers, if you ever see me do that here on the show, you'll know that how I feel about Walker in the moment. But that's the headache-inducing factor. I could definitely see Charles Lee, prowling the sidelines with the fingers on the bridge of the nose, like, oh my God, what are you doing?
Yeah, if I get annoyed, I just exit this broadcast. Usually, that's what happens with me. So
the power suddenly goes out, right? I'm doing the quote fingers.
Just a break, I just slip Duke Energy a $20 bill and says, "Can you take care of something for me?" The big question for me, I'm actually going to use this as a transition. So the big question for me is, have the Hornets had a player like this before? Right? Yep. At least in recent history. That's my question, because one way to answer that is absolutely not. Josh Green playing his kind of role on a team that was very good, that gets to the NBA Finals. And it wasn't just a one-time trip, right? The Dallas Mavericks got to the Western Conference Finals a couple of years ago. They had a down year 2 seasons ago, I guess, but 3 years ago they got to the conference finals. That would have been when Josh Green was a second-year player. So can we get that on more volume? We have all these questions, right? Have they had this type of player before in recent history? And the only guy I could go to here, Doug, is Cody Martin. It was Cody Martin, that type of guy, which brings us to the depth here at shooting guard, or lack thereof. Yeah. What do we even do, right? Like, I guess in theory, the Hornets have tried to have this type of player. Cody Martin improved dramatically from three-point range, like really his second, third go-around. But it was really only the first half of that season. The second half, he started to tail off a little bit, but was still a threat. The way he wins offensively, he's got to hit a shot, but also great cutter. I mean, I think Cody Martin is awesome cutting baseline and finding some of those passes from LaMelo or whoever has the ball in their hands. And also defensively, on-ball type of guy. Maybe defensively they're a little bit different in their strengths, but like fits the type of build, fits the type of mold that you might have. So now, do you have your Josh Green light in healthy Cody Martin, or do you just not have him available anymore? Like, anytime we would ask Steve Clifford about Cody, there would always be a setback. They would try to ramp him up. Something would happen. He wouldn't be able to play. This is a team that gave him $8 million a year. I thought it was a totally fair deal for both sides, and we just haven't seen much from him. I hope that he can salvage some type of basketball career despite being injured so often here, Doug, but I think that's the next most intriguing question for me is, what the hell do you get from Cody Martin?
Cody Martin was the car that I got when I was 16 years old, a gold 1995 Honda Accord. It looked nice on the outside. The idea of the car was nice. Like, obviously it wasn't a sports car. It wasn't a superstar. But I kept it clean, and the idea of it was nice. But every time I got into that damn thing, something was wrong. The radio was out. The air conditioning didn't work. The gas gauge would suddenly go out. Every time you got in it, you tried to rev it up. You tried to get it started, and something would break. So, yeah, he was my 95 Honda Accord. To get back to your question, Cody Martin wasn't the first guy that I thought of. Chronologically, you're right. The first guy that I actually thought of two guys, and they were both part of the last time the Hornets were in the playoffs. My mind always goes back there, just sort of naturally. Yeah. I want to avoid the trauma, the pain, the hurt, and I just want to always go back to that beautiful moment when they made the playoffs. And the two guys that they were playing at the off-guard position for most of the season, it was P.J. Hairston, and that's kind of the bad version. He had major HIF factor when he had the ball in his hands. But then they traded that guy and got to the playoffs because they traded that guy for Courtney Lee. I think Courtney Lee is the last time they had someone in that position, solid 3-and-D player, could make big shots. And that's going to be, if the Hornets compete, that's a huge if. But can Josh Green come up big in big moments? So those are the two guys that I think of. To your point about depth, you're totally right. And I'll just go ahead and answer Stangen or Klangen right now. This position is absolutely Klangen, and it's because question marks around Josh Green and his role, but also because there's really just no firepower at this position. There's no big game potential at this position. It's all just question marks. And if one guy gets hurt, I don't think there's like a natural, okay, we have another version of that guy to plug in. You're going to have to this is the one position where you're going to have to fundamentally change how you play a little bit if somebody gets hurt. So,
but that might not be a bad thing if you just go back to last year with Brandon at the 2 and Miles at the 3, and then you just figure it out from there. So you have some flexibility because of Brandon. Yeah. So if you include Brandon in this conversation, which he'll play some 2 this year, that will happen. So if you include him in the combo and then you add in Josh Green, I think that's how you get it Stangen. But you're right. If we see 80% of the minutes from Brandon Miller this year at the 3 spot, then we go right back to Klangen because of the firepower not being there, to your point. Yeah, those are the questions that you have going into the season surrounding the 2. And last thing real quickly, I will say for most teams in the NBA, I imagine shooting guard would be Klangen. Really hard position these days to try to find some talent. Like you look at the top 2s in the game, it's why I think there was a shot for Brandon Miller if he plays some to reach an all-star game. You've got some ability to climb that ladder pretty quickly compared to other positions in the league.
Yeah, but when you look beyond Josh Green and you look beyond Cody Martin, then you're in the realm of undersized guards that sort of sit in between 1 and 2. So Trey Mann, Nick Smith Jr. that are going to come with
couple combo guys, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, are going to come with some positives and some negatives. You're going to be making major trade-offs, and you're going to have to adjust, those rotations, particularly when you break the lineups to accommodate for those things. So yeah, I mean, look, this is not a team that we're projecting to, just be an automatic even play-in bid. They're going to have to fight to get to the play-in. So. Yeah, I would venture to say, I'm not going to put any decisions in your mouth, but I'm going to venture to say that more of these positions are going to be Klangen than they're going to be Stangen. That's just the reality of what we're dealing with now. But the good news is Josh Green could come in and play his role perfectly. Cody Martin could stay healthy, and we could reevaluate this, in February and say, wow, at the beginning of the season, we thought this was going to be Klangen, but this position actually is a benefit to the Charlotte Hornets, and certainly Charles Lee and his staff hope so.
I think depth is the thing, right? Because if you wanted to go just with starters, you got some players that you feel decent enough about, and then you start to think about starters for other teams and the depth that they might have, and then it's all relative, right? If we can have Stangen here, but NBA Stangen, yeah, it's probably not. So we're probably Klangen at that point. If that sentence made sense whatsoever, it weirdly did in my head, but I don't know if it did for everybody else. Yeah, sorry, Doug. All right, let's move on before you get too annoyed with me. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. Wojnarowski, huh? Adrian going back to the Bonnies. Okay, that's weird. Let's talk about it. Coming up next, LOH.
Is there a read here?
There is. FanDuel. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk about FanDuel quite a bit, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you these days. You've been listening to some of the offers here. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. I know the Panthers are starting Andy Dalton, but I'm going to go ahead and make a guess that you still want to watch out-of-market games if you can, especially in the Queen City. With a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com. You can download America's #1 sports book. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Adrian Wojnarowski, formerly now of ESPN and the ultimate NBA insider, he's no longer that. He has now agreed to become the general manager of the men's basketball program at St. Bonaventure. He's an alumnus of St. Bonaventure. He has a strong relationship with the program, including as a fundraiser for the school's collective in recent years. He is a 1991 graduate of the Western New York School and distinguished alumnus again from, I'm going to pronounce this hopefully correctly, Jandoli School of Communication. So he's going back, basically. He's going back to St. Bonaventure to be the GM of the basketball program, to get more Andrew Nicholsons of the world to play for the Bonnies. Doug, are you going to miss your guy? Because I know how much you love the NBA insiders like Woj and Shams, or as you might call them, information marketers.
That's right. Well, that's what they turned into. I mean, I think that's the shame of it, is that it like Wojnarowski, the old Woj. I'll miss the old Woj, who was an amazing feature writer and had great comments and analysis of what was happening in the NBA, and it wasn't all about breaking news and saying things like future all-star Evan Mobley when talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers, like just nonsense.
Critical effort player that really blossomed into one of the best three-point shooters, and it's like the dude shot 37% from three one year.
It became absurd. It became obvious. It became insulting to our intelligence, and I think that's just a shame because that's what had to happen to compete in the marketplace. And I'm sad that the marketplace became that instead of one that valued actual interesting commentary. So I'm glad he's free of that. I mean, when we talk about him and Shams both, it feels like a prison when we talk about their lifestyle and how they have to live to be successful at that job. So hopefully he doesn't have to live that way as in this new role with the Bonnies.
And he, revealed some of that stuff in his statement leaving ESPN for St. Bonaventure. I don't know if you heard Adam Schefter talk about this. I think he shared his comments on NFL Live or one of the shows on ESPN. But he said Woj decided to leave a job where you have to take a shower with the telephone screen up against the clear shower door so you don't miss any important text or information that comes across your phone. And you can't do anything without your phone. You can't take vacations without your phone. So now that you are free of that, I imagine
you can't do anything?
You can't do anything.
Do anything.
Can't do anything. Yeah. What are you getting at? Interesting. Anyways, I don't know what I didn't know what you were getting at. So he's gone now. We wanted to celebrate him, trying to make this local by searching old Woj Horncats tweets. And we came up with quite a few good ones here, Doug. So we went to Twitter. We searched some of the old tweets. I'll give you the one that David sent us yesterday while you take a look at some of the other ones that you were able to find in your research here. But here's one, and I believe it was the first one from Woj on Twitter about the Bobcats or the Hornets, and this happened in 2009. Here's a Woj tweet. Bobcats and Larry Brown smacked $60,000 each for coach's behavior with the refs. Knowing that franchise, it will lay off employee to pay team fine. That's a bomb. That's a roast. That is a tweet, and a great one to start off the way that he tweets about the Hornets or the Bobcats.
But see, that's old Woj. You cannot imagine him tweeting anything like that because everything had to be about serving. It wasn't about serving an audience of people actually consuming the content. It became about serving agents and players and ownership and all of these factors that had nothing to do with the people that were actually looking at the tweets. So yeah, that was straight old Woj.
Amazing.
I haven't really been able to dig up any other good old Woj tweets about the Hornets Bobcats, and that's not very surprising because They haven't really been a factor in the past 2 decades. So, the major pundits are going to stay away. But I did find some, just reliving some old Bobcats and Hornets moments. This is 2016. Sources, as part of a Courtney Lee deal, Charlotte is sending the Deuce, Brian Roberts. I added the Deuce part. PJ Hairston and 2 seconds to Memphis. Big deal. They got him a playoff bid.
I mean, it's one of the most underrated trades in Hornets history. I mean, when you think about it, just how much that propelled the Hornets into their most successful playoff run of the team that came back to Charlotte, it's crazy. So that's a good one to bring up because it was a big deal for the Hornets. All right, what else you got for us, Doug?
I just found this one from 2015, July 25th or June 25th, 2015. June 25th, that sounds like the NBA draft, and it's Wojnarowski tweeting, Charlotte Hornets have been discussing a possible deal with the Celtics, but no decisions on a pick yet. Sources tell Yahoo. Well, they made a decision, and it was Frank Kaminsky.
Can you believe that's almost 10 years ago? Like, we're so close to that having been a decade ago, which, that one hurts me to no end, to be honest with you. Yeah, the Godfather offer. No, thank you. We don't want a chance at Markelle Fultz, Jason Tatum, or anybody like that. Instead, we'll just take Frank Kaminsky, at least as reported by Woj, and then, of course, we would know what Zach Lowe would have to say on the matter. Yeah, I just wonder if the next time the Hornets trade for Reggie Jackson as a salary dump, if Woj is going to be there to tweet it. Just take a break from his St. Bonaventure job and tweet it out for the 3rd straight time in as many off seasons.
I think he owes us that much for sure. We forgot to do something as part of the position preview. We didn't do the what if game. You want to do this really quickly?
Courtney Lee is a good segue to that. Yeah, so Courtney Lee, I imagine, is going to be a part of the combo.
Yeah, Jeremy Lamb is a part of this combo for the Charlotte Hornets. By the way, if you missed the first position preview, the what if game, portals open up, Avengers Endgame style, and out walks the 2015-16 Charlotte Hornets, that last Mayday playoff series, and it opens up in Spectrum Center. So now Charles Lee has a decision on his hands. Who does he start, and what are the 2 players that remain on the bench, and who else gets cut? So we combine the 2015-16 with the position that we're talking about now. So we've got Josh Green in the discussion. We've got Cody Martin in the discussion. You can throw in Trey Mann and Nick Smith Jr. into the discussion. From the 15-16 team, you're talking about Jeremy Lamb and his 1,200 minutes played, 8.8 points per game, 3.8 rebounds, 1.2 assists. Courtney Lee, huge for that team, 8.9 points per game, 3-and-D guy. And then Troy Daniels, the emotional pick here, the miracle after midnight, the great 3-point shooting weapon off the bench. So who do you got? Start and bench.
My other question is, we'll save Brandon for the small forward spot, but also, how much shooting guard did Nick Batum play for that team?
That's a good question. They haven't listed as small forward in the depth chart. Well, and that's where we get weird about this, right?
Yeah,
it's tough.
Right.
It's we are sort of making up the rules as we go along, because now it's so evolved into a wing position, and maybe we'll just, when we do small forwards next week,
we'll do Nick. Yeah.
We'll do Nick, but I think we should just talk about, is the small forward position staying and clanging, and is the wing position staying and clanging? Because I think this team has a lot of flexibility, as you said, just maybe not as much firepower. So anyway, those are the names. This is the game. Who you start and who you put on the bench.
I mean, this is easy, right? Courtney Lee has to be the starter over everyone. Yep. Very good 3-point shooter, was good that year. And also, even if we want to go with just hindsight, Courtney Lee has the best playoff moment for this Hornets team when he hits the 3 against Miami. There's not another playoff moment that's better in this iteration.
In 20 years.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
So kind of like we can go with some of the moments the milestone moments for Kemba as maybe better than what Courtney Lee did, because they represent why he's the best Hornet of all time. If you wanted to roll that way, okay. You can make a very good argument that as far as an on-court happening in this franchise, Courtney Lee has the best moment of the past 20 years. So Courtney Lee is the starter. I don't have to think twice about it.
No, me neither. I think I'm in agreement there. And then, for me, I think the bench is I'll take Josh Green as my backup and my reserve.
You got to do it? You got to take Troy?
No. I'm not going to take Troy. I'm in between.
Okay.
I'm in between holding on to Trey Mann, but Jeremy Lamb's got a little bit more height. Got a big shot factor.
Well, this is before Jeremy blossomed too.
I know. But
Jeremy
I know
would be
that.
the answer
But I
if
know
we're
that.
not
I
right.
know
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I know he's about to. That's what I'm saying. I know he's about to do that. I can take that into account. I just can't. I mean, maybe it's not a guarantee, but I can take that into account. Okay. You know what? I think there's more promise in Trey Mann than there is, and ceiling than there is Jeremy Lamb. So I'm going to stick with. I'm going to stick with Trey Mann as my reserve.
Well, we put him in the point guard position too, so now we're just all over the place.
Hey, listen, this is my game. I make up whatever rules fit my argument best.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy was not playing very much at that point. It's because it was for a better team, but also he wasn't shooting very well. It's not like Jeremy was a great passer anyway. I think Trey Mann, at what we know at this point of their careers, Trey Mann is probably the guy, but you know, with the size, with the promise, that's why the Hornets traded for him in the first place. Maybe it's tough. It's tough. But Jeremy, a year or two from when we're talking about him, you go with Jeremy Lamb. Now, I think you might go Trey Mann. All right, that'll do it. Long episode. Bunch of stuff for you here on Locked On Hornets. Thanks again for checking us out and making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods, and that includes YouTube. Make sure you check out Doug's Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com, and listen to me on sports radio here in Charlotte, WFNZ 92.7 FM, 12 to 3 each weekday on Wes and Walker. Have a great rest of your day. One more show to close out the week. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.